Hey everybody, welcome. It's another Thursday at BeckerArt to give a paint along. Welcome. And this week we're doing a beach scene. And again, since we've gotten back to my classes, I've been doing one before this one, so I have always a good idea of how to do it a second time. Let me just show you really quickly what we did the first time. And so this is what we did the first time. And we're gonna do it again. And so it's gonna be fun. We had fun today, and everybody did a great job in class. So hopefully you guys can do another great job. I want to thank all of you that have donated and also have bought some of these paintings that I do every day. I do daily paintings on my website, and so thank you to those of you that actually have bought some of them and have helped me out with my job here. I'm still thinking about the Zoom classes. I'm going to get those started pretty soon. I'm doing two more practice classes, and I'm going to be contacting those people that are on my list, and so you'll be getting that really shortly and when we're going to do that. Today's beer is a Belgian beer. So today we have a Belgian beer, and you can't really see that, can you? It's called Lindemans from Belgium, and it's a peach beer. So cheers, everybody. We're going to open this up. It needs an opener. So cheers, everybody. Um, let's go right to our supply list and see what we got going here for all of you newcomers. So here are my supplies that we'll be using. I use my brushes, the Holbein paints, which are great paint. And I didn't use the Richardson transfer paper this time. I hand drew it. I'm not using Mascoid this time, and I am using the Stonehenge Aqua. The value study we'll go right to. And actually, let's go to our my website first. Because again, for those people who don't know where to pick up these, all newcomers, if you want to pick up the painting that we're doing each week, you pick it up right here at my website, and there it is right there. And you can go here when you go and get my YouTube channel here to go and to find these paint-alongs. And if you're coming to my classes during the week, if you're in Illinois, I always put down here. And last week I told my students that I was not going to have classes, but I will have classes this Saturday. I'm heading up to the 27th. I'm heading up to Hibbing, Minnesota, to do a in-house class live. At the same time, there's also going to be a Zoom class, so I'll be away for that. But anyways, let's get back to our value study now and see what we're doing here tonight for a paint along. And so hopefully you drew it on really nicely, because that's most important, is drawing it up really nice. And here's the value study. And not doing much changes, though the only changing I'm going to be doing is to the color. And the color on this, you can see I kind of changed it from the original. It's a little bit more orange, and I put yellow in the sky. I'm probably still going to stick with the yellow in the sky, and I'm going to make sure that this area right here where the sun is going to be the white. And then there's a reflecting right down here. You're going to make that nice and white. So it's going to be reflecting light into the water. And so the only thing that's going to be white in this painting is going to be right here, the white sun, and then the reflection and sparkle that you're going to get in the water. Now, if you want to put some of this sparkle into the water with masking fluid, that's fine. I'm going to try to do it with a cold pressed paper. And then what happens is when I put the brush across it quickly, I'll get that look of farkles. I guess they call them freckles, farkles, sparkles. So sparkling water, and so that's gonna be right down underneath the sun, and so that's gonna be the only light. And I could actually put a little bit of, like on this guy here, I can put some little rim lighting on there, because I mean he doesn't really have it on him, but I can put that on there just to make him part of the center of interest. All right, so let's get going here. We only have 45 minutes to get this done, so we're gonna again, if you want to change the colors and such, that's fine. If you want to make a blue sky and go more with like blue and orange, I'm gonna go with yellow and violet. And let me just show you what I had done this afternoon, just to start you out. If you can see, so what I did is I made a kind of a warmer background, and I did kind of pinkish yellow in the background. And as I took it forward, I went to a cool, and so that the background here would be more warm, and then as you come in for the foreground, I'm picking up a shadow that's cool. It's kind of like what you do in a snow scene. So we're going to try to do that again, but this time I decided that I'm going to make the sky just slightly darker and the water away from the white to give it more of that sparkle, because the darker the darks are, the more the light will look into the sky, the sun will look brighter, and it'll give it more brightness in the lights. And so we're going to make it a little bit darker. And I'm going to bring more of the orange into the back here. And in the foreground, I'm going to make it a little bit cooler. And so we're going to go with that. And I'm going to put a little, you could put some masking fluid around him to give him a little sparkle on him. The surfer dude who's got the surfboard, so we're going to go with that. So cheers again. Here we got a Belgian beer. I can see it. It's Lindemans Peach. And so we're going to go with this Belgian beer today. Oh, that's really good. All the way from Belgium. All right, so let's go in here right away. Let me see who's here first. So we got Lillian, Billy, Lynn, Mary, Carol, Tina, Sue, Carol. Thanks, guys, for coming. And there's, I'm sure, a bunch of other you that are there. You don't have to sign in or anything like that. There's 32 people watching, so thank you. Thanks for coming by. And this will be up here for people ask me, will you be able to do it afterwards if you don't see it? Or if you don't want to paint along with me, you can just put it up later, and then you can paint along at your own pace. Because you don't want to go as fast as I do, because it's just going to take you forever. You have to watch. You have to watch what I'm doing. So let's go, and my sun is going to be right here. So I'm going to wet the whole background. And I'm going to leave nothing alone. I'm just going to wet it with water all the way down to about the horizon line where the water stops. Well, I could wet the whole thing, but by the time I get down here and do some of the light in the water, it's going to be dry by then. And I don't want to have, I want to have this dry anyways, because I want to put those sparkles in there, or sparkles. And so somebody had asked me on Facebook, a friend of mine up in Seattle asked me about the painting I had for the painting of the day today, about sparkles in the water. And a lot of times the sparkles in the water are determined by how rough the water is and how bright the sun is. So this I'm going to take out some yellow and some of this jaune number 2 or 4, I forget what it is. I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to never touch the sun. Don't touch the sun, it's too hot. We want to keep it hot. And so I'm taking a little bit of jaune number 2 and then the yellow. Don't use yellow by itself because it tends to be a little bit too potent. It's like too bright. So I'm giving it a little bit of like flesh tone, I guess pink or whatever you can call that. Because it's kind of a flesh tone, this jaune number 2. And so you go in here, I take a little bit of orange in there to dull it down a little bit. And then back here, and you notice how I left that part right there as a sun. You don't have to make it like a circle. You don't have to do it that much because it's so bright that you can't even see the edge of the sun. And then again, remember, it's going to dry about 20% lighter. And I have to mention again for all newcomers that please ask questions. I will look up every once in a while. Just ask questions on the chat, and I will look up and answer those, hopefully, if I see them. And if I don't see them, a lot of times afterwards, I will, after this thing's over, I can go up there and answer those, or then put it in the comment section of the video. So that's pretty much what the sky is going to be. I'm going to keep it simple. This is going to be a little bit darker over here because I want, the darker it is around the sun, the nicer it'll be when it comes to making it look really bright, the sun. You want the sun to be the brightest. I mean, that is your light source. That's what's lighting this whole picture up. So if I leave that white, now all the sparkles in here, right below it, you're going to keep white. And so the way to do that, some people like to do it with a round brush, some people like to do it with a flat brush. And what you do is you take the same color as the sky, because that's reflecting into the water. And I'm going to take that same color that I just made for the sky, and I'm going to go, and I'm just going to take the side of the brush, I'm just basically going to rub it like this. The side of a brush, I'm going to push it down, and then you just kind of swish it across the paper, on a dry paper, so that you're picking up the texture. I'm going to do this a little bit closer so you can see. I'm just going to take this, and don't go past the sun too much, just kind of go like this. It's kind of a dry brush, but my brush is really wet with the stuff on it. I'm not worrying about the rocks or anything like that. I'm just going in there and getting the texture by rubbing it on the side without the paper being wet. Now it's picking up the texture. I don't know if you can see that. You can pick up texture of the paper because I'm using cold press. Now if you're using hot press, a smooth paper, then that's going to be a little bit more of a problem, because then you're not picking up the texture, you're just getting it flat. And so for that purpose, what you want to do is use the maskoid to get the sparkles that you want. And so now the sides, I'm going to keep this white right down the middle, but the sides I'm going to make them look like this, the sun. It's all going to be darker. I have to make it darker than this reflection in the sun here in the water, because if I don't, then it won't pop out. and I need that light to pop out. I really need it to push it out. So now I'm going to take this side and I'm just going to go in there with the water and make soft edges over here. Don't want soft edges in here. I want that to be, later on I could always put a little soft edges in there if I feel I need some of it. But at first I just want that light coming straight down there. You know, and then like on my, once I get the water on there, of course I put other colors in there too. One of those things that I teach in my class is that once you float your pigment, and I'm a big pigment floater, is that once you put the water down, you can float other colors in there to create shapes. And again, at first we start out with our lights. You know, we always start out with our lights first, and so I'm putting that in there. Big lights, the big light areas. And you notice I put a little violet in there because you can see in the photo there's a little bit of a gray right up here. There's a little bit of gray on the sides, and so that will, with the yellow, the complement is violet. And so I'm putting a little violet in there to grade it up a little bit. And so I just put that in there. Now this is wet, so that'll get soft edges. Here I'm staying away from it because I want that to be, hard edges. That's sparkled. And it's picking up, again, it's picking up the color of the paper. So here now there's a little bit of the waves. So I'm getting a little bit of that in there. This is floating now. Remember, that's wet. Once I wetted it, then it's okay to go in there and just get that wet. Going in back in here and just getting some of the horizon line. I'm kind of making that in there right away. In the background, I'm going to switch over to my round brush because I'm drawing here a little bit. And so let me just switch to my round brush. Round brush I use more for drawing purposes. And that big areas, I can use also like a round brush. I can use the edges, but it's just easier to just take a brush that's a little bit easier to handle. I'll take a little bit of orange. I'm just going to make some of these waves back here while it's wet so that it gets that look of a soft edge. And then later on, I can go back in and get the little waves, the ones that I like to sparkle on a hard edge, because there is going to be some sparkle between the darks too and the thing, but I'll wait for that to dry. But right now I'm just getting the big washes that are soft edged and getting the color I need in this area. I'm going to bring this a little bit more orange down here. And let's see, where does the land start? The land is right here, so I just go behind him to do the water. And don't worry about the guy. If you wanted to put a little edge on him with masking fluid to mask out a little reflection, but he can be darker than what's behind him, so I don't have to right now go in there and get that. While this is still damp, I'm going to go in here and get some of these trees right away. Now these trees are the same color as these, but because of the atmosphere, aerial perspective, you're going to get this to look like the sky more. It's engulfing. The sky is engulfing those trees. Even though those trees are the same color physically as these trees, because of the sky just burning in there, it burns in the color of the sky into that. That's aerial perspective. I call it atmosphere. It's just the atmosphere kind of going in there and kind of making it look like those are the trees. And it's almost blurry too because it's farther away, so it can be softer edge. So I do that while it's wet or even damp because I can get that look to look like a watermark. And watermarks kind of look like a tree sometimes in faraway trees. All right, so there's even a mist, you know, because there's spray from the ocean and stuff, and so that also helps too to make it look a little bit misty and spraying like. Here looks like there's far away distant something, so I'm just going to put that in there. All right, so then I could have put this right in here, these trees, because those trees are going to be darker, and they're just going to get darker and darker as they come forward. Now, I'm going to go in here while this is still a little damp and just pick up a little bit of, make some watermarks. Water is, you know, it's churning, and these waves are hitting, and mostly it becomes white. But you can use the watermarks to your advantage in something like this because the watermark kind of looks like what the item is that you're drawing. So if I took a watermark and made a watermark and it looks like water, like here, I'm just going to put water on there, it's going to separate it and make it look like what it really is. And I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it's sort of like you're making something to look like what it is, and a watermark looks like waves and like splashingness of the water. Splashingness. Oh, there's a new word. Splashingness. Cheers, everybody. Splashingness. Here's the splashingness. All right, ask some questions, guys. Ask some questions. So, hey, Carol. Hey, Tina. Hey, Sue. Carol. Barbara. Gloria. And so there's my lights. I'm getting most of my lights. And I don't have to put any lights in here because this is going to be my dark area. And so that's pretty much my light area done. And when I go into darks for the water and for the rocks and all that, that's my dark time when I do the darks. And so I could, this is not dry yet, so I can't go in there and get the second layer coming forward. So while that's drying, I can go right in here into this already. And I might as well do that right away. Because there's nothing in here that has to be dry, and I can just get that all dark. So now I'm into my darks, middle tones and darks, and that creates shapes and objects. And so you're going to be creating the shape of this beach. I'll go back to my big brush because it's a big area, and I will wet this down first, and hopefully I can still see my shoreline. And so it's going in here, kind of sneaks out here, goes by his legs, and then there's a rock, a bunch of rocks here. So I'll do that in a second. I'm just going to go here, wet this. And excuse me, normally I don't do the foreground before I get the background done. But again, I'm waiting for this to dry, and within the demonstration, I just have to wait for that to dry. And then so while that's drying, I can just do this foreground. And there's a good spot right here to stop anyway, so that if I don't get to there, I can still do that. That's going to be lighter than this. This is going to be up here. I'm just going to get some darks in there. I'm going to make this cool at first, so I'm just going to go in here with some violets. Because basically it's a yellow, violet, blue, and orange kind of thing that I'm using. So when I speak about blue, I take blue and I put a little violet into it. So it's not totally blue. And I'm going in here, and this is going to be a lot darker than that. I mean, really dark. I mean, look at the picture right up here. See how dark that is? And so the darker this land is, the more vibrant the sun will make it. So let's get in here with some dark purple and some dark blue and some dark earth tones. And so, because you can go with, somebody had asked me this week about my palette and what colors I use, and they asked if I had any browns. I really don't have brown because brown, like grays, are so easy to make. You just add two complements together and you just automatically get a brown. And if you want more of, the only brown I kind of have is like a burnt sienna type is right here. This is called light red. And so mixing that with there, it's easy to make browns. Browns, and when I was going to school, I was telling my class today that when I was going to school, that's all we use is browns. Burnt sienna, burnt umber, raw umber, all those browns. But if that's all you use, and you wouldn't mix your browns, like people like to have you mix your reds, or blacks, I mean. So then you're kind of making the paint mix that color. And if you take the brown and it's already mixed and then you mix it with something else, it makes it dull. And so you wouldn't use it pure a lot of times. And so I guess you can use it pure, but most students don't use it pure then because they mix it with something else. And so it tends to be kind of muddy when you're using brown. So I mix my browns, I just let them mix themselves together. So I go here with a little orange and red and just kind of go up by him. All right, Sonia's going to try to paint with me without drawing. Oh boy, that's going to be fun. That's going to be that's a fun exercise. Drawing with your brushes. I've never done that actually. I have a hard time drawing with the thing because it's with watercolor. I've done it with acrylic and oils, but not with watercolor. I shouldn't say that. I've done like sketches on the spot that I've done like that, but that's hard. So have fun with that. Well, let me see it too. Join my group. Join my group on Facebook, and we'd love to see what you're doing. That's for all of you. If you want to join and show your work, I'd love to see. And a lot of you have been doing that. I mean, you've joined my achieving goal group that I have on Facebook. And it's fun to see what you guys are doing with these paint-alongs. You're doing a great job, by the way. Some of you guys can get some really interesting work out of it. And it's so neat to see all the different styles that you guys do. You know, we're all doing the same photograph, but it's funny how it all turns out so differently at times. So I'm going right over the guy here, and I'm just going to make it darker as I go up here. And by this time it's dry. It's getting dry, so let's see, does that go way out there? No, that kind of just goes in and out. I'm going to look up here real quick. So it goes right to about there. I'm going to wet that. And then just, of course, it's getting smaller, so I'm going to use a smaller brush up there. You notice how this is really blues and reds and stuff, and I never do one thing, one object, one color, I mean. I go in there and I put a lot of different colors in there. because it's going to reflect, some of that's going to reflect in there, but it is a shadow, so I like to go in there and get the shadow color, but then I'm still going to put the orange and stuff in there too, because it's just fun to do that. And it makes it look fresh, and you can put light tops and top of dark colors, it doesn't matter. And here I put a little bit of spit, I think, in there, so now my DNA is in my painting too. See that? Talking too much with after drinking the beer. By the way, cheers. Boy, this is a really good Belgian beer. All right, so we're gonna go in here now. Now these trees are green, but because the sun is so warm, and like if you're in a sunset and there's a really red sun, I don't care what color the objects are, you're gonna get some of that color into the trees. And so what I'm going to do is there's a lot of yellow, a lot of orange in back here in the sky. There's a little bit of something that's going to be a bird. And so we're going to go in there. And so I'll start out with a green. I'll mix myself a green, but then I'm going to put orange into it, which kind of makes it brown, which is kind of weird. Actually, no, I got to do these first. Sorry about that. So let me go back here. Again, I've got to get that second one that I was waiting for, the second layer. 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers. So this is the back layer here. And so let me go in with, that's going to be more orange trees, a dark orange. And then I'm using my smaller brush because I'm kind of drawing these trees a little bit smaller. And I'm going to dab a little bit because I just want the outer edge. We're getting darker. And then when we get into like floating the pigment, I'm going to put other colors in there and just kind of put some color and water down here. Put some color and water. And then mix in the soft edges, because again, this is a soft edge inside there because it's farther away. So some of this can be soft edge, some of it can be a little bit harder. And if you make a harder edge, make sure you keep the values down so it doesn't look so contrasty. We want to keep it in the background yet. These trees can be really forward, so there we can do that a little bit darker and harder edged. All right, and so this is going to be just a little bit darker than this. This whole section right here is in front of that, and that'll be even darker yet. So here we go in there, get this little trees going, and then I'll even get more green here too. This is more orange, and now they float. I can also float some color in there to get the branches and all that kind of stuff going on in there. And again, it's farther distance, so you're going to be making it a little bit more soft edged and less contrast. Hard edge, if you want a hard edge, keep it low contrast. No big contrast back there, because otherwise it'll come forward, and we don't want to come forward. We want to push it back. That's the distance. That's the distance back there. All right, now these trees. So now we'll go into the get myself a green. We'll start again. I just forgot about that. And so now we're going to start with green, and really dark green. Pretty dark green, and actually it's brown because I used orange and the green together. So let's go green and orange. You know, it's kind of a red, so that's how come it's turning brown, because complements turn. You know, when you say warm, like red, orange, you know, that it depends on, the orange can be like a reddish orange too, and that would be considered like using complements. It doesn't always have to be the exact like red, bright red when you're talking about using complements together. It could be an orange red. It could be a red that's more towards the purple. You know, it's just, it doesn't have to be so precise. Like when I say red and green being complements, the green can also be all different kinds of greens. It could be a blue green. It could be all kinds of different type of things. So it just has to be one of those, you know, and then that's what your complement is, close to that. So here's a little bit more orangey red, and so because that green is a little bit more. And then I'm going to make the branches. The outer edge is what's important here. The outer edge, because that shows what those trees are. Inside there, you can do a few things that look like branches, but that's simplifying it. Hey, Maura. Let's see, trying to paint with any questions? Come on, questions. Give me some questions, guys. You got to answer some questions. And here we go a little bit darker as we're coming forward. We can put the branches in there. If you have a nervous twitch, this is perfect for you, because you can just do a little twitch like this and you can go right in there. And then put a little water in to let things bleed together on their own. Again, float your pigment in there. Because inside a wash, you can make it, you can identify shapes inside a wash. Put a little bit of orange on top of that. I started out with green, but again, the sky is yellow and orange, so don't be afraid of putting that little yellow in there too. yellow in there, and then I'm going to go down here and put some of the branch or the trunks of the trees in. Put those in there right away. And come down here and put some big ones in here, a little bit thicker. There we go. We're going to be putting that in there like that. It's nice and dark. Seems like there should be one right here too. You notice how I made them a little bit different shapes and sizes. You never want to like make a picket fence where everything is exactly the same in nature. Try to make things a little bit different here and there. And same thing with the color. It's not just one color across, even though that's what it looks like in the picture. In the photograph, it looks like a big dark. And you can do it kind of like that, but I kind of tend to want to put a little bit more color into those things because it is a painting and not a photograph. I don't want it to look like a photograph. I want it to look like a neat painting that has a lot of color in it. That's my style. Again, you can do it just like the photograph and it would be fine. That's not a problem. I never find that, there's so many different styles and such, and so that's great. Some people would even abstract this, make this more of an abstract. That's fine too. It's just that it is art, and so you can do it anything you want. Anything you want to make that painting look like. You want to make it look nice, and so you have to follow certain things. Like when you're using watercolor, the best is to let things float. Let that pigment float. Let it be first one wash. Try to do one wash on everything. If you can do 2 or 3 washes, that's fine, but then make sure that you put it on there and let it float. It's always the best way to get that to look nice. Coming down here, getting the little weeds coming up here. I'm just dabbing like that. Rocks, remember, boulders and rocks. Just think of the boulder as being there's a round top, and on the side it's dark. So here you can see there's a top of that rock I made light, and then I just do a little something on the side, and suddenly it looks like you have rocks there, or a boulder there. And then in the picture, there is nothing here really, so there's no texture, so I can take my brush across that quickly. And I already got the value I need. I don't need to put anything more back there to get maybe a little bit darker shadowing from the trees or something. But I don't need to worry about this here because I've got my center of interest right there. And so I'm going to keep that pretty much what it is right now. As I go down here now, I'm going to get some of these rocks that are in the photo. And you can see right here, there's some really dark rocks and boulders. So I'm going to get that right now. And actually, no, let that dry first because this is all kind of still wet here, a little bit damp. So let's go right into our rocks. And actually, I'm going to work the water from the background to the foreground now because I need to get in there and get some of the dark background. So let's go in here and get the waves. And so way back here, we've got a little bit of a wave. Go in there with like an orangey red. Now my horizon line is pretty crooked, and so it's very important to get that horizon line, if it's especially ocean, to get it nice and straight and horizontal. And actually it goes, it's looking like it's going behind us, but that's okay. So we're gonna do these little waves, these little lines, and then you can just look at the photograph and just copy it basically. Look at where the parts are dark and look at where it's light. And then go in here. By making these darks, it makes this part look lighter. So that's what I'm gearing towards. I'm trying to make the sparkle in the water look brighter. And the way to do that is make the water around it darker. The sky could have been maybe just slightly darker, but oh well, you can't do that now. You have to do that in the very first start. You can't go in afterwards and try to get things accomplished sometimes. And so that's where you got to give and take with watercolor. With the oils, it would be a little bit different story. But this is watercolor, and so sometimes you just get what you get. You just got to live with it. And so that's not exactly what I wanted the sky to be. I wanted it a little bit darker, but it's good. It's not going to be like a killer of the painting or anything like that. So here now we're going with a little bit orange again, getting the dark waves underneath the waves. This front of the wave where it kind of hits the water, the brightness here. You put a little dark right there, it shows the edge of the wave coming in. So there's like a little line, and that's where the sun is not hitting. So you're just kind of putting there, there's a little line. This is just the end of the wave. You see it's like coming in and it rolls over, and that's just obvious that the wave and it comes over, it will give you a dark. Now these rocks are very dark, and so I start out with any color, doesn't matter because I'm going to float color into it. I do the tops light, and you can even scrape this. I notice a lot of times when I'm doing rocks, I forget to tell people, and thank you for somebody who told me the last time when I did the rocks, is that you can scrape them too, the tops. I did bring my little card with to show you in a second. So what I do is I first put in the color, and again, once I get the color in, then decide to make it a little bit darker. And if you want, you can take and scrape the top with the card, like a credit card or a room key or these plastic cards. And you can just kind of go in here, membership card, and see how I can just scrape a little bit on the top, make it light again. But unless you want it all dark, and you can do that too, just paint them dark. Here on the side, I'm leaving that white, and I'm going to go in here and negative paint around them, because you can negative paint around the rock. And then again, I can also scrape on top of that just so that it gets texture. Because by scraping, I get texture of the rock or the boulders and whatever you call them into the water. And then they're sitting up there. And they're pretty dark in this area. I want contrast. And now they're not going to be reflections because the water's moving too fast. And so there may be a couple little darks in here from the water that's like the dark side of the wave. Because there's the top side of the wave and the side of the wave and the underneath part of the wave that you get three different reflections, three different shadows, light, medium, and dark. Like with anything else, the rock on top is light, and then dark on the side, and then crevices will be really dark. So I'm going in here with some really dark darks on the side and little crevices. And again, don't be afraid of floating some brighter colors in there too, because just to have the dark is not always the best. You can go in there, and even in the light area, I'm going to scrape a little bit. Scrape away the tops. Just going to scrape. Get a little bit of texture in there. I don't want them totally white. Now, it is nice to have a little bit of color right there where the sun is hitting. So this could be like the sun's hitting that side and it's really bright right there. Because it would be. The sun is so bright right down that center there. It's reflecting and kind of getting those little sparkles. And then, and also I noticed that what I didn't do, and I forgot about, but I'm going to show you how to rub out, is that the sun's coming through here, but now in this water, in the sand is probably wet. And so you're going to get a little bit of this light. It's not in the photograph, but you know when you're out there that if the sand is wet, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rub out here a little bit. I'm going to rub out some of this paint that I have here. Just take my brush, wet it real lightly, and then take a piece of paper towel or a cloth or whatever you use. I'm going to use some of this blue paper towel. I'm just going to kind of go over it like this. I'm going to get a little bit of reflection of light in the sand. Because it's so bright, the sun is so much this power source, the light source of the painting. So to get a little bit of that into the sand is really a good thing. Now I'm going to go back in here. Oh, don't want to spill that. Right in my sky. All right, and then now we're going to go in here. There's another rock right here. Use my smaller brush. Actually, yeah, use my round brush. Get in here with a nice dark first. And again, I can use the side of my of the card and get some of the texture. Gonna go in here. Now this down here has a little bit of reflection into the water because the water is still right here. It's closer to the shore, so it's not wavy as much as back out there. Out there it's really wavy, so I can't get reflections in a wavy water. Wavy water, you can't get reflections. When it's still, that's where you get reflections. Still water. Like in the morning and on a lake, you can see the reflections. Come back there in the afternoon when it's really wavy and the wind's hitting and getting a lot of waves, then you don't see reflections. Or then, yeah, you don't see reflections. It's just the light of the sky. Now I'm going to go in here, get a little bit of this orange in here to show the different parts of the wave. Again, lines. How are we doing on our time? Anybody ask questions? Salt. Do you ever use salt for different effects like in the sand? Yes, I've used salt at times. It's kind of gimmicky, but there's good times to use them. I saw a couple of people in class today had used salt for some of the other paintings that we've done with the background. So if you want to get a texture look. So with rocks, you can get a textured look with salt. So yes, well, salt is a great thing to get a texture. It's a not gimmicky. It's what it is. It's a technique of making your watercolor wash look like it's textured. So yeah, use salt. Make sure though when you're done with the salt, after it dries, that you scrape it off of there, because it will corrode. You know, it's a very corrosive substance, so it will kind of, you don't want to keep it on there, because when you use it, it will take the water and it'll make those little sparkles, and then rub it off of there as much as you can afterwards. Why can't you go back and make the sky darker now? I can't make the sky darker. Well, I could make parts of it, but what happens is that when I get over to here to this beautiful little thing I did over here, how am I gonna re-wet that and not have that lift up and get mushy and again? So it's best to do it right in the very beginning. I mean, you could. It's just not gonna look as fresh as you can the second time and third time. You can't do it after the second wash and the third wash to make it look as clean. Now in here, I notice I'm gonna make it just a little bit darker in here. I'm just going to make that to be looking like there's like trees and such back there. And so for that I could, because it's not affecting any of the trunks, and the trunks may get a little bit blurry, but that's okay. I can go back over that pretty easily. So that's the reason for that. Crazy question Maura has. Maura says, do you ever paint smaller pictures like 5x7? And what size do you find easier to paint? Do you do more detail in smaller? That's a good question. When you're, it doesn't matter what size you're doing. Like if you're doing a really big painting, people tend to get tighter with big paintings because they think they have to do all these little sections. But what happens is you just use the big area. Like this rock would, no big, no matter how big it is, it's still going to be plain right there. And so people feel that they have to fill it in and make it look more like on a big thick picture. But the smaller you go, the less you have to paint. So it's actually easier to go a little bit smaller than it is to go bigger, because people tend to find that when they go too big, they have too much space to fill, and they don't like to see it just being a blank area. So the smaller you get, then those places feel like they're really detailed. So it's like when you're and around Christmas and the holidays, I normally have the class do postcard size paintings and make them greeting cards. And so we have fun with that. And then for that, it's like a quarter sheet. So 5x7 is about the size. And then you keep it simple. It's almost like doing a value study. And that's what we do with value studies. We do them simple, do them small, because they show what the big picture is. And so you don't have to do all the detail because they're smaller. But when you get bigger, you do have to do some detail, but you don't have to do as much as you think you have to do. So it's a little bit fine line there between how much to do and how much not to do, the bigger you get. Thanks for those questions, guys. Carol, Tina, and Maura, thanks for the questions. So now we got a lot of the, now this between the orange and blue right here, that's a little bit of a, I don't kind of like that, how that's going from it's almost like a line right there of different colors. So that's kind of put a little bit of that in there, but it still seems a little bit too different to these two. So I'm going to re-wet a little bit here, and I can use my spray bottle. Use a little spray bottle, and I'll just spray this a little lightly just to get everything wet. And I'm going to put a little bit of that warm color into this and then a little bit of cool color into that, just so that doesn't look so different both sides. We'll put a little purple up there. I still haven't done the rocks yet in here, but I got to get rid of this, like this divide right here. It looks too divided, and so I'll put a little bit of the orange down here too, and just make it look a little bit more together, coordinated together. All right, that looks a little bit better. Just and when this dries, I will be putting like footprints and stuff like that in the sand and all that kind of stuff. But for now, we're gonna leave it at that. So how much time do we still have here? Oh, we got plenty of time. So we're gonna go into, I'll let that dry, and I can go into the guy, I think, because he's dry. And so this looks pretty good. I've got that. I think I got pretty much. Let me put this a little bit darker because I noticed that the light is not bright enough. And so I'm going to take this down a little bit in the water. Even though just parts, I'm just going to go in there and to parts of this, make it a little bit darker with little waves. Top of the waves can be a little bit darker. Taking the orange, the brilliant orange, mixed with the yellow. Maybe a little bit of yellow in there. And just going in here, and I know there's a lot of gray in this too, but I just want to make this a little bit darker. Again, the darker you make your waves, the brighter this little sunlight that's coming right down to the middle is going to look. And that's how you get the sun to look really bright. And a lot of people say when they see my paint, they go, "Oh man, you're doing a great job with I like how you get to capture the light." Well, the light is, you captured it with the darks, because the darks are what creates the lights that make them shiny. It's not, if you have everything light, the only person I knew, only artist that could do really bright, make it look, it was Soroya. He could do like a beach scene and everything could be light in it, but the way he handled the values and making sure that one spot where the light is always the whitest. And so that's very important. You keep it white and don't have anything else on the page white like that. This has to be the only white that's in there. Otherwise, if I have a little bit over here, it takes away from that. So you just got to keep on remembering that if you want to make it look light, that's the only white that can be on this page. Now I'll put a little bit of, this is a wave too. This is a wave where it goes right on the edge. Put a little line right here. Like this is a reflection, a little shadow where it hits the sand. And on my photograph, there's a lot of waviness in here. I don't like the waviness as much as I would. I think I like the shoreline just solid like that. So maybe I'll put a few waves in here, like a little bit, like it's ruffled, because the wind will ruffle the top of the water. You know, rough it up a little bit. You can put a little bit of that in there, but sometimes it's nice to just have it solid and just feeling really soft and like it's still right there. And let's see over here. You put a little bit of that in there. There's a little reflection from these trees in that water. All right, so let's put these rocks in here now. And it's wet right now, but you know what? I don't mind having a little hard edge and soft edge and even a watermark in my rocks. So there's like this like wall or something right here with nice and dark. And the more pigment I use, it's not going to bleed very far because it's going to be really, really dark. I'm using almost a pure pigment of black and purple and red. Tom asks, I think my values are similar, but doesn't have the brilliance of your use. What are you using? Color-wise, Tom, I'm using all of them. Well, basically my colors are the orange and blue and yellow and violets. So that's basically what I'm using. Most like this orange I consider, this is orange. Actually no, it's not so much blue. It's actually more red and green. So I guess this orangey red is more in the red tone, and then we got the green and trees. Now this is not blue. In my screen it says blue, but this is more of a violet. So it's more of a violet that I'm using. Violet instead of a blue. So yellow and violet, red and green is basically what it's kind of seems like it's coming out to be. And a lot of times I don't predict that completely. Like I don't set out to do that exactly. It's just whatever I'm picking up on my palette a lot of times. And because my screen, my monitor must be really bright, and because of the lighting I have here, I don't have my regular studio set up yet, but I think my monitor tends to be a little bit too bright, and so looking at my monitor, I look at it a lot, and then when I go to paint it, I make it darker than it actually is. So when you see this later on, it's always darker. When I take a picture of it, it always seems to be a little bit darker and better the colors right now, because I'm looking at it, I'm trying to fix my screen in my painting, so it actually ends up making things darker, which is okay. You know, it's just like I think I like that because I make things darker, because us watercolors tend to never make things dark enough. We always make things a little bit too light because it dries 100% lighter. So by making it darker than I'm thinking, then that's better because it's going to be drying 100% lighter anyways. So there's a few rocks sitting on the shore here. And then there's just a bunch of little garbage down here. You know, the garbage that goes on the shore when it comes in from the ocean tide, and then you know all the little shells and such. So put a little of that in there. And then since these are rocks, we know what we can do. We can scrape, remember? So we can put a little of that in there. So let's scrape a little bit. Again, I use my card, scrape the tops of them a little bit, and just scrape away the top of the rock. It's an easy way to get texture on top of a rock. And if you don't feel like you got it the first wash, so what? Just go back in. Like this is almost too much, so I'll go back in and get rid of the stuff I don't like, and then keep the stuff I do like. So that's one of those processes where you can do it a couple of times of scraping until you get what you feel like you want in that rock or in that garbage that's on the beach. So that's almost dry, and I'll go back in here and I'm getting a reflection of him, because I'm going to show you how to make him look reflected into the sand, make it look like wet sand. And then we'll do him now. And now see what I was talking about with the sky. If I re-wet, look what happened to the branches. They got all kind of screwed up because I put water over top of them. So that's why you would not want to do the whole sky again. So I think Carol asked that. It makes things bad when you go over stuff. And so again, one wash is always the best. I'm gonna take my small brush. I'm gonna take my small brush and my glasses because now I'm doing the guy. So I put my glasses on and see what we're doing. But first, cheers, everybody. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Another fun Thursday. And again, please post these things. I love to see what you guys are doing and ask questions. In my group, I also, a couple of times, if I have the time, I will take, if there's a problem in your painting, I will take it into Photoshop. And what I do is I will change it to what I think it should be. Hopefully you don't mind that. I don't think nobody's minded that yet. If you do mind that, let me know because I don't want to change it. But I just changed it in Photoshop to show you what I would do to make it a little bit better, or to show how to change it. And then you can rub it out or change it. And I do it in Photoshop, so I don't actually have the painting, but I just do it in Photoshop to show you, because sometimes it's better to see the change than to actually just talk about the change. And so here I'm just going in here now, and I start out with any dark. It doesn't matter what dark you start out with him, because again, once it's wet, then you float other colors in there. Of course, he doesn't have a shirt on because he's a surfer dude, and so I'm going to give him flesh tones, but it is dark. He is dark, so yes, flesh tones, but it's also dark. So a dark red, dark flesh tone, dark pink, dark red. Those are warm flesh tone colors. And so now I'm going here to the surfboard. And again, drawing. Get your drawing right. I don't care how good you are a painter. If your drawing is off, it's just going to show. It just magnifies it. So you have to have the drawing good. I don't care if you trace it. Whatever you do, you have to make the painting drawn well. Trace it. Do whatever you can to make the drawing right. And if at the end, when you're painting it, you're not getting the drawing in there right because you can't see it, then stop, redraw it. And like if you cover over the guy you don't see underneath and you can't draw it with a paintbrush, then take your pencil and redraw it. Get back in there and try to get your look. I'm going over my trees now again because I screwed them up because I put that little color in there. So I'm just going to kind of go over them a little bit. And also I noticed it's kind of like flat down here. I always like to have nothing like flat like that. So I'm going to put a little bit more foliage in here in this area. Maybe there's a palm right in here, just so it's not so perfect. I don't like even things. Always go with the odd shapes, odd numbers. It's better when you go with odd shapes, odd numbers. Here the stems of those trees, the branches, we're going to bring down very light, a lot lighter than these in here because they're farther back. But it's nice to have them in there, and then some foliage back here too to kind of repeat that, but just not as dark. All right, let's give him legs. I stopped there too long, too early. Let's give him some legs, and he's got some shorts on. It's not skinny dipping here in the surfboard. He's got his shorts on, and then he's holding something. I'm not sure what he's holding, but I'm gonna give him a little bucket because he picked up some clams that he's gonna take back to the fire and give him some clams, or chuck some clams. And then his legs are going to be the same flesh tone as his top there. So I'm going to go with a dark. And again, I start with any dark. I really just start with a warm, and then I add to that. And he's got one leg up, and you can see the bottom of his foot, and then the other part goes straight down and kind of bleeds into the sand, because I'm not drawing like a sandal or a shoe or anything. I'm just drawing a line that goes straight down, and then that's it. I don't go any farther than that. Maybe just make it a little bit darker where it would be darker, like here would be a little bit darker, right underneath his shorts would be a little bit darker. The back leg would be a little bit darker than the front that's in fart here. In front, I mean, not fart. All right, so now, I know his leg is really skinny right here. Now we're going to put a little reflection in there. Reflection. And that means not a shadow. It's not a shadow. People were thinking that the sun's hitting him, and yes, you would probably have a shadow there, but I'm going to put more of a reflection of like the sand is wet. And so you take the same color I have here, and that's right here, it's all this color I have, a little bit darker than what I have over there. Or if you use it twice, just make this go straight down here, break it up a little bit so that there's like, looks like there's some sand things there where there's not wet. And it'll just look like this beach is wet. It doesn't have to be anything, it's not a shadow. It's not reflecting this exact shape. It's more here, it's shadowing. It's like a mirror. It's like it's wet. It's like it's glass. Because once sand gets wet, it's like glass. and so it's reflecting an image into the sand. You can do that here too, pretend like that's, it really wouldn't work, but I'm just going to show you that you can reflect that rock in down here just to make it look a little bit like it's coming. You know, that the sand is wet. It's like if on a sidewalk, if you do a sidewalk, it's the same thing. It may be a sidewalk in cement, but once it's wet, it reflects like anything else, any other water. So now, I'm gonna give him a little bit of color in his shorts, just because that's the only place I can probably think of something that's a little bit different color than everything else, just to make him center of interest. And so I'm putting in a little bit of blue in here, give him some blue shorts, and maybe his surfboard has a really bright red on it, or orange, maybe a little bit of orange on it, just to kind of, now it looks like a kayak. Actually, it's too thick, so we're gonna make it. All right, and so now we're getting pretty close to the end here. Let's give him some dark hair, because it looks kind of like he's has a weird shaped head. So I'm gonna make it really dark on this back end. Not on the top. The top, like a rock, is light, and then the back and the side would be darker. So that's the same thing with the head. The top is lighter because the sun's hitting the top first, right? Side of this bucket can be a little bit darker away from the sun. You can also put a shadow. I mean, I could put a shadow here on top of but you know, I don't think it's necessary. Enough of that. And now the final thing would be just to put a trail where he walked, like the little footprints, and that's detail, and that's what you can look in the photograph and see what you can see. Here I notice I have a couple of branches that I drew in, but I didn't penciled in, but I didn't paint them. Put a couple of those in there. A couple of coconuts. Cheers. Let's see if my water up here doesn't have enough waves. I'm waiting for this still to dry. This is still a little wet. And now I just did a bad thing because that's going to be, hold on, oh boy. There we go. There was a little drop there. All right, so this is too white and there's not enough waves back there, so I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow, and I'm just going to put a lot of little waves in through here, just to make it, you know, a little bit more realistic. Seems like there would be a lot of waves through there, and maybe this is going to be a little bit darker in some spots. A reflection with the waves. And I think we're almost good here. Okay, let's see the footprints. Any more questions? Oh boy. I think when you Photoshop the painting, it is very helpful. Oh, thanks, Karen. Yeah, I think it always helps when people see what I do to change what they're, because sometimes explaining it doesn't do as good as if I actually show what I do. I'm just looking at my thing and I think it's too red. I'm gonna put a little blue in there. Put a little dark in here. Okay. What else was I doing? Okay, footprints. So little footprints, and I'm stalling here. How much time we have? We have 7 minutes. So we're gonna put little footprints going back, and you know, on the beach there's gonna be footprints, right? And there's gonna be little people that walked on it, and little markings of other people who walked in here before. Just mess it up a little bit, because the beach is not, you know, sometimes it is nice when it's fresh and you're the first person to walk on the beach, and that's cool. You can do that too. And all right, I think we're good here. A little bit more of the waves here. Nice little darker wave right here, and I think we're good. All right, there we go. Let me take the tape off and we will answer any more questions. What size brush do you use to draw the man? I used a number 8. My number 8 BeckerArt brush. Let's see right here, it's the number 8 BeckerArt brush. And the brushes I sell, the set of 6, are just the points they come to. Look at the point on this one, on both of these. If you look at the, let me see if I can show you the point. They're just so sharp, and they're blurry up here because they're not in focus here. If I put my hand here, There you can see they're really sharp and pointy, and so you can get a nice, a nice point in there. I just use a small round, and sometimes you can use even the for certain things you can use the long-haired brush, the rigger or the liner brush. Those are good, and it all depends on what you're painting. And so use the brush that best fits the purpose of what you're painting. Okay, Shauna says one time she's going to paint along. Okay, good luck with that because I know a lot of people try to paint along, and it's hard to paint along and also listen at the same time and try to get it at the same time. But just go ahead, you can start, but if you don't finish at the same time, that's fine. What you do is just wait until it's over and go back because it's going to be up there forever and ever. So you can just go back to it. And let me take the tape off here. And let me see if there's any more questions. Karen asks, is my 8 by 11? No, it's more 10 by 14. It's a quarter sheet, and usually quarter sheet's about 10 by 14, 11 by 15 kind of size. Yeah, it's mostly the actual paper is 11 by 15, but then when I tape it, I kind of cut in a quarter of an inch there, so it's half an inch on the sides, and so you end up being about a 10 by 14 size. So I ripped off the tape. Now I should have told you that when you rip off the tape, always go away from it so you don't rip your paper, your nice paper that you just worked the whole hour on. And again, so now you can see this is a little bit darker than this one. This one's a little bit lighter. This is the one I did this afternoon in class. And so if you can see, this one ended up being a little lighter, a little bit more blues, where this one's warmer. And I kind of like the warmer one better. But that's just me. And so let me just go to here and our ending frame. And so thanks again, guys, for coming back to another Thursday. Let me just look really quickly if you guys have any more questions. Sue, she can vouch for the brushes. Thank you so much. I know a lot of you guys like them, and I love them, and that's the only reason I got them a whole bunch to make them for me because I like them and everybody's asking for them. So you can get them on my website. If you need to get them on my website, just go to my website, and everything's on my website. Just go there, and you can figure all this stuff out. And again, post these if you paint it, and you can always go back and look at it over and over again, the video, and put some comments in there, ask questions in the comment section on the bottom, not on now because this is going to go away once the chat's done. It's done. And so if you need to ask questions afterwards, put them in the chat, and I always look it up, and it actually emails them to me. So you can always come back and ask questions that way too. If I didn't answer them today as I'm painting, you can go for that. And so next week, again, next Thursday, we'll be doing it again. And I'm not sure what I paint. And so it's always good for you guys to help me out and give me ideas of what you want to see. I am probably going to be doing a portrait pretty soon. And I'm also going to be doing something on black. And I will also be doing a special demonstration that I think will be advertised through a bunch of people. And I think it's going to be acrylic. It's going to be an acrylic painting done on water, like a watercolor. So look for that on my newsletter. And again, to sign up for a newsletter, just go to my website and you find all that stuff there. So for this Thursday, thanks again, guys. Thanks for coming by. And cheers again.